idea. Look, there's I have no idea. Look, there's all sorts of hyperbole tonight and just this fantastical, these hypotheticals they've made up. Future presidents are going to turn into assassins and all the rest. It's madness. Listen, remember this. The president and the vice president are the only two offices in our constitutional system that are elected by all the people. No one who is elected to that office is going to be prone to this kind of crazy criminal activity. What the court is saying here follows common sense and, of course, our Constitution as well. You have to have the president with the ability to make difficult decisions hourly, daily, and not be worried about rogue prosecutors going after them at some point in the future. I mean, the president can't operate if he has that kind of sword of Damocles hanging over his head. And that's very simply what the court ruled today. It should have been 9-0. It was only 6-3. And the liberal justices are playing along with the charade.
You know, if any other country in the world expanded executive immunity to protect an executive from criminal acts, decriminalized insurrection even as they tried to violently prevent a peaceful transfer of power, legalized bribery so billionaires could bribe politicians for their own personal well-being, let corporations pollute as they will for their personal profit, climate science be damned, criminalize homelessness to expand the prison industrial complex and ensure that low-income people spend time in jail making billionaires more money, and tell women they have to die rather than get the basic abortion care they need to live. We would call that country a banana republic. But here in the United States, we call that Supreme Court precedence.
Evil wears a top hat, and it has tap shoes and a cape, and it's on stage, and it's hollering, and goodness is always backstage, sort of waving. But it takes up all the energy because it is nothing. It gotta have a costume. It's gotta be loud. It's gotta be bloody. Are you gonna do a double take or not? Will you do a double take if there's blood running?
Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And yeah, that Speaker Mike Johnson and a whole lot of nonsense. Lots of news this morning. We're going to also talk about a little good news, some good news. I won't call it little, but some good news. 200 children were rescued from a human trafficking ring in Georgia. We'll have a special guest on this morning to talk about that particular topic. But the fallout of Donald Trump and his goons of the Supreme Court continues. But look, Rudy Giuliani was disbarred. Steve Bannon went to prison. I mean, we can run down the list of Trump's associates, as someone said, the Trump crime family. And folks are still concerned about an 81-year-old man who really has gotten the job done. We'll talk about all of that this morning. The Trump effect again, Manhattan prosecutor and the judge have decided to put off his July 11th sentencing because of the Supreme Court decision. And the Supreme Court certainly has greenlit this, and you best believe Trump is already signaling that he will act immediately. He called for a military tribunal against Liz Cheney for treason. Now, remember, he said that he is going to exact revenge. He was going to send SEAL Team 6. He could send SEAL Team 6 to kill his political rivals. He is also, again, doubling down on his calls for the prosecutions of President Biden, Vice President Harris, Obama, others. Everybody is in trouble if this man gets his way in November. But first, folks, yesterday we had a law professor on from Syracuse University, whom many said seemed to downplay the significance of the Supreme Court's decision on Trump's immunity. At the very least, the professor appeared to have been trying hard to be politically correct. Let it be known, his opinion turns out to be among a very small minority. A swarm of historians and legal experts have warned that the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling only has opened the door to dangerous abuses of power, and it strikes against the foundation of American principles of accountability under the law. Michael Waldman, for instance, who is the president of the Brennan Center for Justice and author of several books about the country's legal landscape, said there are reasons to be nervous when it comes to the prosecution of a former president, and some standards would make sense. But here, though, the court has issued an instruction manual for law breaking presidents. Waldman went on to say that make sure you conspire only with other government employees, and you'll never be held accountable. Presidential historian and author Michael Beschloff, he was among those who referred to the idea that the decision cut against the intent of the nation's founders. He says, thanks to the Supreme Court, presidents in future will have access to far more unaccountable power than they ever had in American history. He posted on social media that founders wanted a president, not a king. Historian and author Garrett Graff, who wrote a book on Watergate, brought up the infamous quote from President Nixon that if a president does it, that means it's not illegal, and said nobody had believed it was true. All of American history argues the opposite. And yet, that's exactly what the Supreme Court agreed. The entire test of Watergate was no one is above the law. Well, today, the Supreme Court has made it clear that one man is above the law. Asa Hutchinson, the former Arkansas governor, now this is a Republican. He said the Supreme Court gave presidents greater control of the Justice Department. That's because the decision says in quote official act that gets immunity includes threatening to fire the attorney general if he does not take an action. He says, I can only imagine how this may be abused. And of course, Alex Padilla, who's a Democrat, said the decision afforded future presidents carte blanche to abuse the powers of their office for political and personal gain and laid the foundation for Trump to have absolute authority in a potential second term. Well, folks, here at Let It Be Known, we just wanted this to be clear that this is a 5 alarm fire. Now, some might say, why didn't you have the other legal experts on your program? Well, folks, it's one of the realities of the Black press, one of the challenges. We owe you, our viewers, our readers, our subscribers, nothing short of the truth. We owe you what the Black press has traditionally been about, which is bringing you the best information and news without fear or favor. With disinformation and misinformation, particularly on Black targeted platforms that are not Black owned, even people who look like us, especially people who look like us, are very elusive when the Black press calls, when Black owned is calling. And that is a shame. Slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, the Civil Rights Movement, they were all times that Black America desperately needed to come together. And back then, for the most part, Black America did come together. Today is perhaps the most critical of times that Black America needs to come together. And right now, other than our disdain for the term Black jobs and the Blacks, we have not done so. Yesterday, I received the latest Government Accounting Office report about what advertising dollars have been spent by federal agencies, like the DOD, Department of Education, Treasury, NASA, etc. And get this, folks, over the past 10 years, the report notes that they've spent $14.9 billion in advertising. 14% of the total federal advertising spending, or $2.1 billion during that period, went to small, disadvantaged businesses and those owned by women and minorities. Additionally, federal agencies spent about $1 billion for COVID-related advertising contracts, and 3.5%, or about $37 million, was awarded to those type of businesses. Sounds good, right? Well, let's look at what the government terms small, disadvantaged businesses and those owned by women and minorities. very small disadvantaged businesses. At least 51% owned and controlled by one or more socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. It says nothing about Black owned media or Black people in general. Then, in the category of minority owned businesses, well, the criteria for that is more than 51% owned and controlled by one or more members of a minority group. Now, a minority group could mean Asians, German Americans, Italian Americans, and women, among others. Again, not necessarily Black, and certainly not Black. And of course, women owned is self describable, right? At least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women, and whose management and daily operations are controlled by one or more women. Again, not Black. The bottom line, I reached out to the GAO office and they agreed that those are the definitions in the comprehensive report and does not say what they spent with Black owned media. Now, Roland Martin, in several conversations, privately and publicly, he has broke it down and found that of the $14.9 billion, perhaps 10 million or less went to Black owned. 10 million or less out of 14.9 billion. 14.9 billion. Let that sit for a moment. Additionally, all of those pledges by corporate America following George Floyd's murder were canceled, along with affirmative action and the outright assault on DE&I. Heck, the fearless fund. Black women can't even give Black women money. And of course, the power of the MAGA white supremacists and their allies. Then there's this. According to the University of Georgia, Black buying power in the US was estimated at $1.4 trillion just 5 years ago. And it is projected to be 1.8 trillion this year. This economic force should translate into substantial support for the Black press of America, Black owned media, Black owned newspapers. Let it be known. Yet, wealthy Black entertainers, athletes, and business owners have largely failed to ensure the Black press's survival. Several high profile Black individuals have the financial clout to significantly support the Black press. For example, Oprah Winfrey's annual salary from her endless media ventures is reportedly $315 million. And that's from when she was still filming her talk show. Forbes right now estimates Oprah's worth at $3 billion. Tyler Perry has a net worth, according to Forbes, of $800 million. And he's made history by opening the first African American owned movie studio. Will Smith, who had a great comeback the other day on the BET Awards, has an estimated net worth of about $350 million. Denzel Washington, $280 million. We have substantial influence in Hollywood. Morgan Freeman, $250 million. Samuel L. Jackson, Eddie Murphy, Jamie Foxx, Ice Cube, each with net worths ranging between 150 to $250 million. They have the means to make a difference. With a net worth of $2.5 billion, Jay-Z is the wealthiest Black music artist. Rihanna is second with $1.7 billion, and Beyonce is third with $440 million. Because of their financial clout and cultural influence, they are the ideal champions for the Black press. Then you turn to sports. NBA legends Michael Jordan, LeBron James, net worths of $3.5 billion and $1.2 billion, respectively, have shown leadership on and off the basketball court. But their investments in the Black press could ensure its continued advocacy for justice and equality. This upcoming NBA season, there are a staggering amount of Jason Tatum, for instance, of the Boston Celtics, just signed a contract that will pay him $60 million a season. Bradley Beal will make 50.2 million. Carl Anthony Towns will make 50 million. Kawhi Leonard will make 49.5 million. Jimmy Butler, 48.8 million. Dame Lillard, 49 million. Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges combined for 48.2 million. These figures, I highlight them. It shows the immense financial capacity within the Black community to support its critical institutions like the Black Press of America. That combined net worth that we just mentioned, $19 billion. Folks, America is on the brink, and Black America is going to feel so much of that pain. If Black America doesn't finally get off its collective or get off its collective and too often selfish behinds, that spending power, that wealth, that celebrity, as Taraji P. Henson so eloquently stated at the BET Awards, will quickly turn into full-on surviving legalized lynchings, rapes, tortures, and the like. This all is not, as Taraji said, to scare you. It's real. It's Project 2025. It's the complete dictatorship of MAGA. Special guest this morning is Derica Wilson from the Black and Missing Foundation, with some really, really great news that we're going to talk about. Good morning, Derica. It's good to see you again.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Derica. Some great news. Every time I think of these operations, these sting operations that rescue, particularly children, but anyone from sex trafficking, I think about the Black and Missing Foundation. Police, for instance, arrested 14 people in this multi-agency investigation that was targeting sex traffickers and sex buyers in Northwest Georgia. More than 200 children were rescued. Derica, your work, your sister's work, your sister-in-law, Natalie, you two have been the catalyst behind all of this. So I start by saying thank you, number one. Um,
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
well, Derica, when you see news like this, it has to warm your heart. But what else can be done? I know that there's more can be done. There, those 200 kids that were rescued, I'm sure there are so much more out there crying out to be rescued.
There are so many children that are missing. Human trafficking, it's hidden in plain sight. And we just need our community to be vigilant. But let me just take a step back. I just want to applaud law enforcement for their efforts. There were two operations, actually. The 14 predators were arrested in Georgia, but the 200 kids that were rescued, that was another part of an operation in in Miami, Florida. So there's two operations going on simultaneously. We know that there's others that are happening, but we just need our community to be vigilant. If they see something, say something. And understanding that children, they can't solicit to sex. You know, it's rape, it's trafficking, and we have to take a stand in our community because there are so many children that are missing.
Derica, I know that when I have spoken with you and Natalie in the past, and certainly, folks, you could still check out their amazing documentary on HBO that they did on HBO, that they actually won an award for. At least nominated, but I think you won, right?
We've won several awards for Black and Missing, so thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah, absolutely. But when I've spoken with you, um, one of the biggest problems was what happens when a child goes missing, how authorities react initially, and how the media just ignores certain ones. Let's talk about that. Has that improved at all from what you've seen?
You know, I think that we're starting to take a turn. There are still barriers out there. You know, when children are reported missing in the Black and Brown community, they're often labeled as runaways, and runaways are not receiving that alert, the Amber Alert. They're not receiving the media coverage, the law enforcement resources. And if they're not receiving this, then the community cannot come to aid because they're unaware, right? But what we are seeing and what we're doing, we're working with lawmakers across the country to create alerts, because we're not asking for more, we're asking for the same resources. It should not be based on race, gender, or zip code. Anyone that's missing deserves the law enforcement resources as well as the media attention. So we're starting to take a turn in the right direction, but we also see that we have to do better in our community as well. And social media has been very critical in our efforts.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love the, shirt, hashtag help us find us. That is, how does one get that shirt? Is that, a Black and Missing product?
It most certainly is a Black and Missing product. And if someone visits our website at bamfi.org, we have a link to our shop in the toolbar. And those donations go back to the families that we're serving. We encourage people to stand in solidarity with us, to purchase the shirt, to help these families of the missing. They need us.
And certainly, we need the Black and Missing Foundation started, around 2008, if I'm not mistaken, and, you guys have more than answered the call, to really help. Give us, let's walk through this again to Derica. I think it's very important. Um, the responsibility or the actions, I should say, not responsibility, but the actions that a parent or a loved one should take the moment they find that their child or someone they love is missing.
The first thing a family should do is immediately report it to law enforcement. That's the first step. Reach out to the Black and Missing Foundation. We actually have on our website where families can upload their loved ones to our website. We will create a flyer for them. So often families are taking matters into their own hands and they're creating flyers and putting their personal information out there. And in addition to looking for their loved one, they're also getting those scam and ransom calls. So we want to help mitigate those issues. So by reaching out to us, we can help. We're going to help spread the word. We're going to work hand in hand with law enforcement. We understand that there is a lack of trust when it comes to our community and law enforcement. So we get tips when they don't even get the tips, law enforcement. So we share that and we utilize our media partnerships such as Black News. You guys have been amazing to us, and utilizing social media to help apply pressure to law enforcement. So Natalie and I, we've created this strategy and how we really mobilize, and media really is the answer to help bring exposure, but also apply pressure to law enforcement and notifying the public that someone is missing from our community.
And again, I know one of the issues too, and there's so many examples of this, but ki- kids of color, people of color, don't get that media attention. Are we seeing certainly with the again the great documentary, folks? If you haven't seen it, you have to see the documentary about the Black and Missing Foundation, Derek and Natalie, on HBO. Derek, certainly, have we seen a an advancement in how or an improvement, I should say, in how media covers Black and Missing?
We've created amazing partnerships with local and national media outlets. The Black News has been very instrumental in this movement. We also had to sit down and think about how can we tell our own stories. So Natalie and I, we actually launched our own production company, Bamfi Enterprises. We can't always sit down and wait on someone to cover our stories. It's important for us to tell our stories. These families, they need it, they deserve it. And we want to make sure that we are providing that hope and we're telling the stories in a manner in which it should be told. We have made great strides, even with the partnerships like you have on the screen. We partnered with Traffic Sales and Profit (TSP) because we want to make sure that our missing they're coming home. So in August 1st, we're launching our BAM5 TSP reward fund for families. Because it's important. We know that someone out there knows something. We just need that one person to come forward to help us find us.
Yeah, and David Youngblood wants to know, Derica, how did you become involved in this effort?
So there was a young woman that went missing from my hometown in 2004 by the name of Tamika Houston. And when we heard her story, it really hit home. Tamika looked like my daughter. She looked like my nieces. And if it was one of my family members, I would want that same help from the community. So we saw that our aunt was struggling, who was also a media executive, and she could not get coverage. Months later, Natalie Holloway went missing, and saying her name alone, we all know her story. So Natalie and I started doing some research to see if this really was an issue that was impacting our community. And when we started the organization in 2008, there were 30% of missing people were persons of color, and that number has since increased to 40%. So why not us? My background is law enforcement. Natalie's background is media public relations. And those are the two critical professions needed in finding us. And since our inception, we have helped bring resolution to close to 500 families across this country.
That is amazing. Folks might think of that and think about all of the missing and say 500. You got to really put that in perspective. That is really a great job on the part of the Black and Missing Foundation. And it's great to hear that you guys are growing. You stuck it out. I know it wasn't easy, particularly in the first several years. It was
Mhm.
just you and Natalie, and not much else help. Are are you feeling now that the Black and Missing is getting that community support now and getting more support to really help? Because listen, helping the Black and Missing Foundation is helping to find missing kids and missing people, particularly those of color.
This is so much bigger than us. We answered the call, and this is what we have to do. At some point, we hope that Black and Missing Foundation dies a natural death, but until that time, we're gonna keep pounding the pavement. I think what people also don't realize is that this is very taxing. I mean, we're trying to scale up. We're not getting those federal dollars. We are grassroots, and we want to continue to expand, but we need funding so we can continue to expand and help so many families, because there's this thing where the person that goes missing is not the same person who returns home. Families are reaching out to us daily asking for resources. They're asking for financial support in the reunification, especially when, for example, we had a child that was missing in Baltimore and she was trafficked. We found her in Florida. We had to provide resources to her mom so she can connect with her and reunite. Sadly, there's the burial expenses when we have families that go missing, and sadly, it's not the outcome we all expect. And again,
Mhm.
just having the right people, we have to have the team in place so we can continue this very important and critical work for our community.
Yeah, and these sex trafficking, human trafficking rings, have you found them? Have law enforcement found them to be connected in some way?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there was research recently conducted by the Urban Institute, and they interviewed traffickers, and traffickers admitted to targeting Black women and Black children for two reasons. Number one, they said that they knew that law enforcement would not look for us. And number two, if they were caught, they would get less jail time than if they targeted a Black woman or a Black child.
Wow, that is unreal. That here in 2024, that is something that still goes on. But so, Derica, The Power 96 is asking about your website. Is there a phone number or text message system that where folks can report missing Black people? He says.
Absolutely. So you can go to our website. It's bamfi.org. It's on my shirt. Want to make sure that everyone can see that. Also, we have an 877 number. It's 1-877-972 uh, 2634. So 877-97-BAM-FI. They can either call our 24-hour hotline to report tips, or they can actually search on our website for the cases and submit tips anonymously there. We don't care who you are. We just want the information that you have that can end the nightmare for the families that we're serving. And I just wanted to really highlight a police department while I'm on the call with you. The Oakland Police Department, they have changed how they handle missing person cases in California, and they actually upload their missing cases to our website. And as of yesterday, we have found 6 individuals in Oakland, California, because people are coming with tips, and the tips are coming to our organization, and we're able to share it with law enforcement. And so it really shows how it takes all of us. It's
Yes.
law enforcement, it's the media, and it's our community. Law enforcement take the cases seriously. Media put this information out there, and our community, they see something, they say something, and we're able to bring resolution to these families.
Yeah, see something, say something. Mike V is asking, can you speak on the new Ebony alerting system that's in place?
Yes. So back in January 2024, the Ebony Alert became law in California. And what's so unique about the Ebony Alert, how it differs from the Amber Alert, it is inclusive of the age range of 12 to 25. It includes runaways as well as trafficking, because the Amber Alert excludes that. And what we're seeing is that there's a high population of children and young women who are falling through the cracks they because of their classification for one reason, but then also um, because there's no notification in place for those that are above 18 to 65. So when you're thinking about these young folks, especially in their early 20s, just graduating high school, going off to college, having that sense of freedom, they're very vulnerable. They're living their lives, but there's so many sinister people that are out there. So the Ebony Alert, again, it's similar to the Amber Alert, but it really is inclusive for children that are fallen victim and that are really preyed upon between the age of 12 and 25.
Yeah, and before we let you go, Derica, again, I think this is so important. I remember talking with Natalie about this. You and I may have spoke about this as well. When you report someone missing and law enforcement arrives at your home, what do you recommend for the families? How do they have that meeting with law enforcement?
First of all, families need to have everything at their fingertip: photos, height, weight, last known location. If they have, multiple pictures, who are their friends, associates? Have there been any issues? Is there any medical concerns? Those are just some of the key items that families need to have at their fingertip. Time is of the essence, and we deal with this often as well, where families are asking for our assistance, and sometimes we don't have a clear photo, or we may not even have a photo. So, again, time is of the essence. We want to get this information out there instantly. So, making sure, and in this day and time, technology has evolved. So, just making sure that you have all of this at your fingertips.
And real quick, that 48 hours. They say 48 hours. Yeah, you have to be missing, I believe, for 48 hours. But then they say 48 hours of the first 48 is the most critical. How do you navigate that?
So what's interesting is that there's so many shows out there, and those fiction shows, and people are under the impression that the waiting period is 48 hours. It is so important for all the viewers and listeners out there to understand what the laws are in their state. Some police jurisdiction can take the police report immediately, and then some make families wait 24 hours. The issue is there is no holistic approach across the country in how missing person cases are handled. And so we really need to call upon our elected officials at the federal level to establish a process that agencies across the country are on the same page. I shouldn't have to wait 24 hours in this state, but in the state next to me or the neighbor jurisdiction, I can report immediately. Again, time is of the essence, and we have to take the discretion from law enforcement. We have to have things written in black and white. We have to have policies and procedures and how to handle these cases, because a missing person is a homicide waiting to happen.
Wow. Uh, and the Power 96 says you should be at the Essence Festival, the National Urban League Convention in New Orleans this month. He says it's really important that we have missing Black children and women around here all the time. They have missing Black children and women in New Orleans all the time. So he's suggesting that the Black and Missing Foundation is represented at these events. Are you guys usually at these or invited to these type of events to highlight the plight of Black and missing?
Well, I will say that New Orleans is a hot spot, and I love manifestation, right? So we haven't been invited, but that is something that Natalie and I have worked so hard on trying to be in those spaces. We are serving our community, and it's
Big time.
important. Awareness is key. So, for everyone out there listening, Essence, the Congressional Black Caucus, we're ready to come out. This is an issue, and we have to address it. So we have to let you know what the issues are, but then together we have to come up with the solutions as well.
Dr. Wilson, thank you so much for joining the Black Presses Let It Be Known. Thank you, more importantly, for all you do. The today's program, Greer has titled it "No One Is Coming to Save Us." Well, help us find us. We have to save ourselves, and that's been the theme, and that's what the Black and Missing Foundation was all about. We thank you so much, and give our best to Natalie.
Mr. Brown, thank you so much for having us. And if I could just say one last thing
Yes,
before we
absolutely.
disconnect, we were actually invited to the Traffic Sales and Profit Conference this past weekend, and their theme the entire weekend is "They're Not Like Us." And so, with that closing message that you just said, we are the ones, right? No one is like us. And so, we have to do what we need to do for our community. And
Thank you so much.
I would definitely let Natalie know.
Thank you so much. Derica
Thank
Wilson, the
you.
Black and Missing Foundation. Continue to follow them, folks. And hey, they got the greatest of information for such a horrifying situation. Again, thanks to them and all that they've been doing. Rudy Giuliani has been disbarred in New York. His association with the twice impeached and 34 times convicted former president has led to him losing his law license. And what's interesting about that too is that Rudy has been claiming poverty of late, that he can't make any money, that he doesn't have any money. Making money practicing law is now out of the question for the one of the biggest Trump apologists is that there is. So Rudy has been disbarred. At the same time, Steve Bannon has been sent to jail for the next 4 months. So again, the association, the association with Donald Trump has led to folks losing careers and freedom. Let that sit. And speaking of the former president, Manhattan prosecutors did agree to not to drop, but to delay sentencing, along with the judge of Trump's 34 convictions. It was scheduled for July the 11th, and now they tentatively have planned a hearing for September. Again, that's the same time that Judge Chuck in D.C. maybe holding hearings in that matter based on what the Supreme Court has just ruled. So in other words, no accountability whatsoever. Everyone else around him, though, and it was interesting too. You remember COVID? He did nothing, and Herman Cain, black man, big black man, a big supporter, black man, and a big supporter of the former president, got COVID at a super spreader event that was led by Trump and died. And that was in 2020. And folks, if you've heard Trump mention Herman Cain's name between then and now, you're the only one that's heard it. He has not. He didn't, from what was reported, and it has not been refuted. He didn't attend the funeral, the wake, and didn't offer any condolences, at least not publicly. And so this is what you get when you are loyal to this individual. And he again escalated his vows to prosecute his political opponents just before and after the Supreme Court, his Supreme Court, his justices handed him the victory he knew that they would, that we all figured they would, I should say. But he has made sure to go after his political rivals, including, of course, the man who spearheaded all of these prosecutions, the man who was bold enough and brave enough and courageous enough to host and help put together that January 6th commission out of Congress. Representative Benny Thomas, let's take a look at this clip. I think we have volume yet. So we're having problems with volume on that right now. Mike V says, "Remember Diamond and Silk?" Yeah. Whom at the funeral claimed he didn't know who she, he had never met her or something of that sort. But that is that's the type of loyalty that happens out of that camp. But nonetheless, he has circulated posts Trump has on his social media website invoking televised military tribunals and calling for the jailing of President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, even his old buddy, Senator Mitch McConnell, who's just as he's just as trying to find the word, folks, but he's just as bad as Trump. Let's put it that way. Also on his hit list, apparently, is Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, former Vice President Mike Pence. And you remember Mike Pence is the infamously, it's been rough. I'm trying to drink some water. But he was at the Capitol, and Trump's supporters wanted to hang him. They had the noose ready. And yes, indeed, had they found him, that is exactly what they were going to do.
Move on to former President Trump, if I can, because Trump's been amplifying these social media posts, calling for a televised military tribunal for former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the vice chair, along with your chairmanship of the January 6th committee. And Trump also reposted a picture of you, which includes photos of 14 other former and current elected officials. It says they should be going to jail on Monday, not Steve Bannon. Obviously, you should not be going to jail. You did not commit any crimes. And there should not be a military tribunal for Liz Cheney. She is not guilty of treason. All of this is wild and crazy. Are you worried, I guess is my question. Are you worried?
Well, look, Donald Trump is a convicted felon. he'll do anything to try to get the monkey off his back. And that's what he's doing. He's just being Donald Trump. I can't imagine a family person sitting watching TV and Donald Trump's on it, and that person says, look, one day you can be just like him, son or daughter. President, he's not the ideal person that you'd want your son or daughter to be. Let's face it. He doesn't tell the truth. He has lied more than anybody. And so for me, a member of Congress from the South, who wouldn't be here had it not been for my fellow government who defended my rights as a person to run for public office, I expect my government to take care of me. I don't want my government to become an oppressor. We can't have a president who thinks they are king. He can't be a dictator for a day. He can't get any of that. And so what we have in this person is somebody who basically is not a good person. He will not tell the truth. In this country, as well as being a leader, you have to be a man or woman of your word. Donald Trump is not a man of his word.
On that, I want to move on to former President Trump, if I can.
Yeah, it is, of course, Congressman Benny Thompson is a fearless warrior, if you will, but you certainly have every reason to believe that this man is, as he said it, he's seeking retribution. You certainly have to believe that Benny Thompson is directly in his line of fire, and as is Biden and others. So this election. So again, we talk so much about how they Trump and his allies, particularly the Heritage Foundation, want an America that looks like 1619 America, really. But they are certainly going to go full bore on these individuals that are mentioned on his hit list. Liz Cheney was singled out, as we said at the top. He wants a televised military tribunal there, and he said he's declared her guilty of treason. And that's the other part of this absolute power that he has been, or a president has now been granted by the Supreme Court. Because him declaring her guilty doesn't matter what a court or a jury might think or say. And that is the other, when you start unpeeling all the layers, folks, of that decision. There was a couple of people who had an initial reaction. And some I didn't follow up on because the initial reaction told me that they were not informed, didn't want to be informed, maybe, or just not paying attention at the moment, or not paying attention all along. But there was a couple of people who said, "Oh, this is nothing. It doesn't mean anything." And these people were not lawyers or legal scholars or the like. I guess it was spoken out of hope, spoken out of just without, spoken out of a lack of knowledge. But now that the layers are being peeled back, we see that something like this. So go to court. Jury says not guilty, but this man now has the power to reverse that himself. And they got double jeopardy. Remember what we keep saying. Stop saying they can't do this. They are doing it. And it's going to be infinitely worse if on January 20th, that man is making his way from the U.S. Capitol to the White House. And just think about that. Just think about that. Return to the U.S. Capitol as president after the utter destruction and death from January 6th. Think about that. That's a pretty uh sad, dangerous thing to even contemplate. Um, as that was brought out there, in that segment with Benny Thompson, all of those people in those photos, and Trump says they all should be going to jail, not Steve Bannon. So, someone want to articulate what crime did Benny Thompson commit? What crime did Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Mike Pence or Chuck Schumer commit? Or Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama? What crimes did they commit? Well, that's part of the point of a dictator, right? And go back and watch if you have the stomach for it. The documentary, it was not a documentary, it was a movie. Forrest Whitaker played Idi Amin. And go back and watch that if you want to really understand what's about to happen in the United States. I mean, obviously, we see from afar Kim Jong Un. We see Putin over there in Russia, um, and other dictators. Yeah, it says President Putin. He's a dictator. He's Trump's idol, of course. But go back and watch that if you want a preview of what's coming um, to the United States January 20th if November goes a certain way. It is incredible. And there was a report the New Yorker put out yesterday about Trump and Epstein, the late Epstein, right? And in it, it talked about, it showed some court filings and highlighted this woman who had said Trump sexually assaulted her, brutally sexually assaulted her, forced her to engage with a 12-year-old, I believe it was, in sexual activity. Um, and just think about that. Now, that hasn't been proven in court, but just think about all the other stuff along with that. And this person is going to get tens of millions of votes from folks supporting that. Project 2025 is alive and well and thriving. We're going to bring you more about Project 2025. We're going to stay on top of all of this. But again, as I said in the outset, as we close, um, we certainly would be wonderful if there was at least a modicum of support from all of these uh, positioned African Americans when it comes to the Black press of America. Um, most, if not all of them, either got their start in the Black press or was first recognized by the Black press. And it's time now that everybody, all hands on deck. It's time now that we get that support. And we say this, I say this, not to shame them, but to remind them. There are many causes that they get behind, that they put their monies behind. And 197-year-old Black press should be one of them. We say it a lot, but the Black press was founded before slavery ended. And the Black press is still here. That should mean something because it meant a lot when they were growing up in their communities. All of them, I dare say, had a Black-owned newspaper on their coffee table. Certainly Ebony and Jet, if nothing else. So, folks, those who those who are paying attention, those who are listening, hey, put some pressure on them too. And one way to put pressure on them is to subscribe to our YouTube page and share it with as many people as you can. And that is your way of supporting the Black press. Go to LIBK-News on YouTube and just hit the subscribe button. We're not going to charge you. But what we will charge you with is coming back tomorrow for more news and information. We will see you then. Thanks for watching.